r/ask Reddit. What did your job want you to hide from customers? I worked at an art glass store that sold glass, mostly made in China with very few actual nice pieces. We were told to peel the made in China stickers off. If anyone asked where the glass came from, we would say New Jersey, which is where the supplier was from. I always felt like Danny DeVito and Matilda changing the odometer on his used cars. I worked at McDonald's and they taught me how to pinch the fry carton just right while putting the fries into them so that it looked full, but actually wasn't. I only had one customer call me out on it. He shook the fries out into his bag and poured them back into the fry carton himself, and it only filled up halfway, so I had to give him more fries. I was impressed and embarrassed. It's been 7 years and I can still see his face. I fucking hated that practice and basically refused to do it. Never got fired, but managed to have a few customers ask me when my shifts were the next week so they could have me filling their fries. The fries were dirt cheap too. Case held 6 bags. Each bag made 8 or 12 baskets, and each basket made 4 or 5 large fries filled my way. They only cost $20 a case, so if they just filled them like I would, they would net $288 with all conservative numbers. 8, 4, $1.50, and assuming they were all sold in meals. This is coming from management side because I was shipping manager, so I had to know all this shit. I find it hilarious that someone would plan their week around when the fry guy at McDonald's works so that they don't get ripped off on their fry order. I used to work with a guy that would eat a McDonald's MC muffin trio every single day. He had his preferred clerk. He was also very skinny and dressed the same way most of the time. Old shirt and jeans from the 70s. He was weird but a good worker. I work at a shoe store, and we recently got a shipment of clearance sandals, aka years old sandals they had shoved in some warehouse. As I was putting them out, I noticed some had green stuff all over them. Mold. We were instructed by corporate to wipe it off and sell them anyway. Luckily my manager is sane and refuses to put out the moldy shoes, but still some sketchy shit. That's disgusting. At one of my jobs, 2 times I found enormous dead beetles stuck in the box of stock as soon as I opened it. My DM told me to damage and dispose every item in those boxes. At my other job, I found dead termites and a bunch of sawdust in a set of wooden jewelry boxes after opening them from shipment, and once again was told to dispose of them and wash the hell out of my hands. We don't have termites where I live, that I've heard of, anyway, nor do we have giant beetles. It's not the termites you got to worry about, it's the flesh-eating burrowing worms that live on them that should be your concern. Thanks for the nightmares, kind stranger. Worked at a bike rent shop where we told customers we sanitized the helmets we rented via heat treatment. Heat treatment consisted of having some sorry-ass high schooler run up to the top of the building, essentially the attic of this old wooden structure, and just leave them in boxes, or, if they were wet, hung from nails to drip and dry. I gag just thinking about that. Imagine the smell. I've worked for 2 separate escape rooms. Everyone who did get out got really close. Usually we'll show you what you missed if there's only a few puzzles left. If we don't show you anything, it's because we didn't want to make you feel bad. I never want to go because I suck at puzzles. I would probably wait for the other people to solve the stuff for me. You never know. You might surprise yourself and find one that you're inherently good at. You're also not totally alone, as there's always someone monitoring your progress to help if when you need it. If you're still not sure, every team needs someone to find all the pieces. I hope you give them a try. I work in a center with a room that has 2 secret rooms you need to get into, and the escape door is in the last secret room. Many times particularly bad groups haven't got out of the first room and I've had to awkwardly escort them out the way they came in, as if the other 2 rooms didn't exist. The cup of soup and bowl of soup were the exact same size. People would pay more for a bowl and just get a cup of soup and a bowl that was shorter and wider at the bottom than the cup. Yep, the same thing at the cafe I work at, except it's the adults and children's size milkshakes. I feel like I would notice if I got an adult's and a child's milkshake and they were the same size. Where I work, the child's milkshake goes into the normal child's cup, which is 12 ounces. The regular milkshake goes into a milkshake cup which looks bigger because of the shape and the dome lid, but still only holds 12 ounces. However, the child's milkshake is cheaper than the regular. I used to work in a jewelry shop that sold cheap Chinese shit silver/gold painted plastic jewelry, none of it being real metal. But every sale I had to upsell one of these $5 polishing cloths. You can't polish a turd. The only thing this cloth did was rub the cheap paint off the plastic faster. I felt like such a con artist. You can't polish a turd, but you can roll it in glitter and make it sparkle. The Mythbusters actually proved that you can polish a turd. I stand corrected. My erection. That's the opposite to how the store I work in runs. Everything is washed by hand, except anything that comes pre-packaged. Anything dropped is washed again in the bag. Anything that's pre-packaged, dropped and spilled is tossed, and the package sent back for a claim. More than a couple of the melons we just got in on a pallet are bad, or any of them moldy, sent back, and fresh ones requested. That's how it was when I worked at Whole Foods. I'd walk into produce and they would constantly be cutting and washing stuff and would save me little bits of watermelon and pineapple because I brought them some of the broken deformed cookies. Every department had a bartering system to stay in good graces. Prep Food got our and washed gelato spoons after close and we got the leftover pizza. Just be wary of the grapes because the supplier in Cali had a really bad Black Widow problem when I was there. The bastards were everywhere and even bit a couple of the stock boys. Where all the stuff is. I worked at a supermarket and we regularly reorganized the aisles. Put the bread on the one end of the shop and half a year later on the other end. Things like that. The more items the customer sees while in the store, looking for items that have been moved, the more money they spend. This is a strategy used by IKEA as well. I think IKEA's strategy is trap them in the shop until they buy something. Worked at a nursery, plants, not babies, that sold Christmas trees in winter. We had to have 2 employees per customer in the lot at all times. One to talk to and distract the customer. The other to hold up the particular tree they were interested in and shake the rats out while said customer was distracted. Basically these people were buying $50 rat nests to put in their house. This is the most disturbing of anything in the thread. Have you read the roaches in the syrup one? I worked in the vegetable seed industry. Some varieties that were exclusive to certain customers were just repackaged and renamed seed of an existing variety. If something was underselling, they just changed the name, rewrote the description and claimed it was a better, sister line. It was always funny though when customers demanded the old line because the new one wasn't as good. We'd just shrug, change the label back to the old name and off it went. My brother and I worked for a junkie who happened to be surprisingly functional. He owned a number of auction houses. My brother and I would do everything for his business. Maintenance, janitorial, carpentry, plumbing, loading unloading trucks, displaying merchandise during call-outs. Think Vanna White. We would even drive his wife around when he was too high. I have a million stories from this place, but 2 instances stood out that apply directly to ARP's title. So one of his auction houses primarily sold furniture, everything from office chairs to sex swings, but mostly couches. So we got a living room set in one day. Lava seat, couch, rocking chair, and it was mismatched. Just the colors were different. But unfortunately that meant it was going to be extremely hard to sell the individual pieces. So the owner, Rob Cause Duckett, that's his name, Rob decided he wasn't going to lose a sale and in a heroin-inspired haze ordered me and my brother to spray paint the entire set gray. Not any fancy spray paint, just regular old Rust-Oleum gray. So we did it. My brother and I spent like 3 hours putting layer after layer of paint on a living room set. Have you ever tried to spray paint fabric? It doesn't really work, especially after it dries. So the day of the sale happens and me and my brother are sweating bullets over this disgusting looking set. Like the paint is all sloughing off in huge chips. There's grey dust all around this thing. Then someone buys the ducking thing as part of a lot. Fine, right? No, not fine. We have to load these ducking things. Towards the end of the night Rob pulls us to the side and explains he has made sure the buyer of the silver set would have his trailer at the dock first and that we were to load the silver set first. Obviously Rob wanted this shit hidden deep in the bowels of the customer's trailer. See, many of our customers were from out of state. so there was almost no chance this would come back to bite Rob as long as we could get it on the trailer without anyone knowing. So we did it. No idea what happened once the customer found out, but his entire trailer bed was covered in silver flakes, as were my brother and I realize now this post went on way too long. If anyone wants to hear the horse soap story, I'll post it in a reply. So we got a huge shipment of mane and tail shampoo. It's this horse shampoo that people started using for themselves, and now it's primarily a people shampoo. Anyways, Rob hatched a master plan. See, he was going to have my brother and I empty each of the bottles into those large water fountain jugs, then refill the empty bottles with water, reseal the cases and sell them to an out-of-state buyer. So we did it. Hours it took us, and holy shit the mess. Soap ducking everywhere. There must have been 200-300 bottles of the soap. We filled, I think, a dozen or more water jugs. Long story short, the water sold and we never heard back from the buyer. However, that's not really what makes this story funny. You've all seen the South Park episode with the underpants gnomes, right? Familiar with the meme? Step 1. Steal underpants. Step 2, Step 3. Profit? That's exactly what was happening. Rob had no end game planned here. We stole all this ducking shampoo, and he was mumbling something about selling it, but he had no plan for that. No way of getting the soap back into containers, or like a sales pitch or anything worked up. No, we just took all the jugs of soap, placed them behind the auction house, and that's where they sat for many years. The liquid slowly separating until each container looked like some mad scientist's goo. The whole thing was completely pointless. The cheesecakes are not frozen. They are deeply chilled, which from what I have gathered is an industry term roughly equating to frozen AF, plus a bunch of other stuff. Sounds like a good way to describe myself. I am deeply chilled AF. Besides hiding how much we're marking up equipment, those of us in the field have to actively hide all of the duck ups that happen back in the office. Oh, it's on back order. It will be in next week. Means that a-hole Bob forgot to order it, or we're actually on credit hold with that company because our customers don't pay us fast enough. Yet, there was a lot of traffic today. Means that a-hole Steve gave us the wrong address and failed to mention the lack of a loading dock. I machine embroider shirts for different companies. If the stitching doesn't line up, such as an outline around a logo, and the colors allow for it, we have a bucket full of markers to recolor the thread, even going as far as coloring the shirt that shows through to make it look cohesive. The best ones are Sharpie or dry erase markers. I like this. As a hairdresser, I dye my clothes back to black with Sharpies all the time after light henna gets on them. My uncle used to work at a restaurant many decades ago as a teenager. It was his job each morning to strain the cockroaches out of the pancake syrup containers on each table. That's extremely disgusting. He later became a pastor, probably as penance. The decaf at Burger King isn't actually decaf. It's just the regular coffee, but watered down. Just like most things in Burger King. When I still worked there, Staples charged $160 for basically running Malwarebytes and CCleaner and called it virus removal. And I think most people know $160 was bullshit for that, but it was always the old people that got screwed with that BS. Former Office Depot employee here, I did literally the same thing. Worked at a restaurant that also did catering. People would come in for tastings regularly for things like weddings, and we'd give them samples of some of our food. The big thing at these tastings was the cheesecake, which was made in-house to be served in the restaurant and was pretty great. What we didn't tell them was that for catering events, we bought pre-made cheesecakes instead. I think they were Marie calendars. Basically, we'd sell them on our cheesecake, then give them something less good that was easier/cheaper for us. Honestly, we were stretching ourselves a little thin with catering. It was always a mess trying to get all the food prepared as well as run the restaurant. We had one chef who worked every single day and the waiters doubled as caterers, sometimes working long wait and catering shifts back to back. I worked at a hotel that did this too. I was wedding planner and always had to deal with the wedding party complaining the day after that the food was different to what they had tasted. Management did not give a duck. Was not fun times. Daily Deal Company. The fact that the third-party Android tablets we were selling on our site for Christmas weren't even in production yet. We were basically just taking their money for that product. There were parents who were super excited to find a great deal for their kid during the holiday rush, and I felt like shit having to sell it to them. I was working customer service and they were usually calling to see how legit the product was. I left soon afterwards. Is it hard to see why? So I wasn't able to see the full consequence of that deal. I don't understand. So did they not actually get anything for their money? Or was it overpriced or what? My old boss invented a fake employee that he would blame all mistakes on when speaking with customers. Once in a while, he would tell the customers he fired that imaginary employee and then come up with a new name for a new imaginary employee that would be the new sucker. This is genius. A burrito chain that I worked at was on Undercover Boss. In the episode, the chain wouldn't let ABC show the fact that our guacamole comes from avocado paste, not fresh avocados. Compared to the rest I've read on this thread, the fact guacamole is made using avocado paste is the least of my worries now heading out to eat food. I worked at a high-end resort, like $2,000 person a night at the time. They billed themselves as eco, but did things that definitely weren't. Probably the most enjoyable were the slop dumping runs, where we would go and dump kitchen scraps in the ocean. The idea was to not have bears get into it, so we'd freeze it in 5-gallon buckets and go dump it in the ocean. We used the same spot and had a crab trap set up there because this stuff attracted crabs like crazy. We were instructed to not dump slop on guest arrival days though, since there was a bit of a slick formed. Who knew rich people food was so fatty? Anyway, one day we forgot and dumped a load on an arrivals day. When one of the guests commented on the slick, I blamed the fish farms nearby. They have since changed their ways and run a pretty good show now. But back in the day, we were eco in front, redneck in the back. We don't wash the blankets every day. Your AC probably has mildew mold in it unless you have a full-size AC in it. Also, we don't vacuum your floor very well. And not everything at break is fresh cooked. I've stayed at so many motels nobody had to tell me this. At one spa it was the clocks. They didn't want clients to see what time it was because they would make us cut their massage sessions, so they didn't want them to know they were being cheated. At my last spa, our aromatherapy we charged extra for wasn't even real aromatherapy. My boss didn't want to pay the money for real essential oils, so they bought fragrance oil or worse. Flavors used to usually make lip balm. In fast food, drive-through comes first because they're the majority of customers. If you come in you'll get your food between us serving drive-through. They've asked a few girls on their periods to keep working. Also, we're not supposed to talk about the prostitution that goes on. The club doesn't make anything from it and aren't doing anything illegal, but we're not supposed to draw attention to it anyway. Is it true that the poles spin and the dancers don't? There are two types of poles, static and spin poles. The difference is self-explanatory. Depending on the brand of pole, they usually can be switched from static to spin with a few quick turns at the bottom. While it is way easier to gain momentum on a spin pole, it's much harder to control. Once you learn how to curb yourself on spin, it can look graceful as hell. Static poles provide the dancer the opportunity to whip out power moves and not worry about their momentum making them lose control. Source: I am a pole fitness dancer instructor and student. I worked as a delivery driver for this Japanese restaurant that had two locations about 10 minutes apart. We only had one delivery driver on duty at a time and we were not allowed to tell the customers. What sucked about that is that both restaurants had a delivery radius of 5 miles and sometimes there would be a delivery order at the other location which was only like 1 mile away from the house you were supposed to deliver to, but really it was a longer drive for you since you were like 5 miles away at the other location. Not only would you just get a $2 delivery fee when it should have been $5, but then you had to deal with people angry that their food took so long when they thought you were super close. On top of that, when you were working as a cashier, the only tips you were allowed to keep were the ones left on the table. Any ones left one of the 2 tip jars we had, or written on credit card receipts in the restaurant, went to the owners and not us. It felt nice when people would tip us because we provided a good service, but then it felt shitty that you wouldn't see any of that money. Generally this is illegal, tip stealing. Oh yeah, I know. Trust me, there were a lot of illegal things with that job. We were all paid in cash. All the workers in the kitchen were illegal immigrants that lived together in a house owned by the owners, and I'm sure a ton of other things. I was in college at the time and desperately needed this job, so I stuck with it. The place had crazy turnaround too because one of the owners was a crazy bitch. She had this trick she liked to play on all the new people where when you were in the back helping with the dishes she would sharpen the sushi knife and then suddenly hit you on the wrist with the dull end. One of the cooks told me about it, so I was prepared and didn't even flinch. But a lot of other people freaked out or quit on the spot. 4-star hotels are slowly but surely turning into 2-star hotels, but double the price and a different brand. Almost all hotel managers employ the same 0-hour minimum wage, 0 experience, don't give a duck. Because why should they? Employees and try to run the business with as few staff on shift as possible. This means that the quality of service you get is going to be basically the same at the Hilton or the Holiday Inn because both places are employing identically skilled staff. That's not even mentioning all the other corners being cut at basically every hotel everywhere. Most of the time it feels like a pure goddamn miracle the place is still standing by the end of your shift. I cannot ducking wait to leave this toxic shithole of an industry. At Green they told us to tell customers rain won't wash away the liquid fertilizer and weed control we spray, but it does. A simple Google search will tell you. They also tell customers we can kill crabgrass and other grassy weeds. What they don't tell you is that when grassy weeds die they don't wilt away, they turn purple, but they will still be there. Law firm. Hi, thanks for holding. The attorney is actually in a meeting with another client right now. Can I take a message for you and they can't call back when they are free? Hangs up phone, goes back to talking to attorney who didn't want to talk to phone person. I work in a body shop and they were telling me a story of when they received a car from a crash. When they get a new car they always clean it first while washing out the blood they found a nose. They didn't really try to hide it, but they never told any customers that it was in the next room. Well, it is a body shop. Kohl's Chapters Indigo. It is less expensive to tear off the front and back cover of a pocket paperback novel and send it back to the publisher for a refund, rather than to send the whole book or sell at a reduced cost. Why this is bad? Employees must destroy the rest of the book so it is no longer readable and dispose of them in black garbage bags, or risk being fired. Disposing of these books one night led me to finding a Payless Shoes employee throwing away garbage bags full of shoes that did not sell. Employees must cut out the tongue of the shoe so they are not usable should someone find them. I used to volunteer at my city library. I was the destroyer, as they called it. My job was mostly to process the discards, although I did some shelving and other tasks as well. I had to destroy the barcode, rip off the covers, and stamp the discard in these books before taking them to the dumpster. I didn't like throwing out the books, but they legally couldn't give them away for free since it was a government entity. One day the library system manager, who works at several libraries, comes up to me, upset at all the damaged books. Apparently he didn't even know we had to discard these books, so he came up with a solution. Now we can sell the books for 1 cent to anyone who wants them. So we're technically not giving them away. A lot of the discards were also donated books that we didn't have time or space to catalog. Now we have an honor book system. It's a big box at the front of the library filled with these books. You take one and bring it back on an honor system when you're done with it. It's worked out great and we haven't thrown out a book in years except for ones that were already damaged. Restaurant worker here. The photo album literally full of pictures the GM and other floor managers posing with the rats they shot with the restaurant-owned pellet gun. Long story short, this was a very old restaurant built into a hill in a nice coastal town on the central California coast. The main building, which housed a kitchen and 2 of the main dining rooms, was probably 80 years old by the time I was working there, so there was an established rodent problem. Anyhow, after service was said and done for the night, and the cleaners were done cleaning, the managers would leave the hood vent and the lights on and establish a line of sight that ran about 150 yards along the pantry kitchen, the hot line, dish pit and into the prep kitchen. The story goes that they would grab a bottle of whatever they wanted to drink and post up for hours drinking and killing rats. I vividly remember a picture of the GM holding a dead rat by the tail with this huge shit-eating grin across his face. Priceless. No more in the bag. Just whatever's on the shelves when you're too lazy to walk back and actually check it. I work at a place that makes artisan French fries. For the last year or so, we've advertised plain old red potatoes as Laura potatoes, which are similar but 10,000x better. A red potato is red on the outside and white starchy like a rutted on the inside. A Laura potato is red on the outside and gold, buttery, smooth, all around awesome on the inside. It's implicit, but we're pretty much encouraged to just lie to people. We only got called out once when an actual potato farmer came to eat there, but other than that, we mostly get away with it. The injustice of it all. All the dancers on stage, wandering around doing table dances and in the VIP rooms are either partially drunk or indulging in one or more illicit substances. Hard to be the sober naked person in the room when everyone else is partying. It just makes it so much easier to relax, be seductive, enjoy yourself and make more money. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.